What is a Power BI gateway? When do you really need a Power BI gateway? How do you use it? And is it possible to avoid using one? All excellent questions, my friend, and we would try to answer them all in this video. But before we go any further, I have a hot tip to share with you. There's some confusion around this. Folks, you do not need a paid Power BI license to use Power BI Gateway. You do need a license if you're sharing a report with others, but if you're just using for yourself and you want to try out Power BI Gateway to refresh your own reports in your workspace, you can use it with the free license. Now, of course, that is true as of recording this video. Microsoft, I'm sure, retains the right to change the licensing scheme, but as of now, you do not need a Power BI license to use Power BI Gateway, which is good news. Now, this video is part of a series on Power BI gateways. Once the next videos are available, we would link to them up in the corner and down in the description. So make sure to watch them all. And if you are just getting started or you keep getting stuck in Power BI, then make sure to check out our complete step-by-step Power BI tutorial as well. Let's dive into Power BI gateways. My name is Avi Singh. I'm Microsoft MVP and best-selling Power BI author. And if you want to become a Power BI pro, make sure to subscribe and click that bell so you are notified whenever I go live to answer your Power BI questions. Now, out of the 4 questions that we're trying to answer, let's tackle these 2 together. So what is a Power BI gateway and when do I need it? We'll come back and cover the other 2. Let me give you a quick definition first. Once you publish your Power BI models from Power BI Desktop to PowerBI.com, it becomes a challenge to refresh them if you're using on-premise data sources. And that is where the Power BI gateway steps in. It makes that possible by acting as a bridge, connecting PowerBI.com to your on-premise data sources. Now, here's how typically the story goes. Now, you perhaps or somebody in your company starts off just playing around with Power BI Desktop. They download it and they start working with it, and they use the Get Data feature, which is pretty much the first thing you do in Power BI. So they use Get Data, and they use that to connect to quite a few possibly on-premise data sources. Now, these could be files, these could be folders they're connecting to, these could be local SQL servers, or really any other data source which is local or on your internal network. And everything works great. They have connected the Power BI Desktop to these local on-premise data sources, build that model, maybe build a dashboard, and they can refresh it as many times as they want on their desktop. They just open the Power BI Desktop, hit refresh, and everything works. So everything works so far, but then they take the next step, most likely because they want to share their report or they just want to check out the functionality on PowerBI.com. And then they go ahead and publish it to PowerBI.com, and that's when things stop working. Now, when they publish it to PowerBI.com, the report itself works, but then most likely they either try out one of these options. They either find out this option to refresh the report, so they invoke that in the data set, and they get this error, refresh failed due to gateway configuration issues. Or they maybe try out clicking the other button, schedule refresh, and there they find out that schedule refresh is kind of grayed out, which is also because you need a Power BI gateway. So if you or one of the users in your company have hit this wall, then guess what? Well, you need a Power BI gateway. So we'll talk about that. And what about avoiding one? We'll come back and talk about that later. So again, what Power BI gateway is going to do is going to let PowerBI.com. So again, the challenge is, how does PowerBI.com connect to or talk to your on-premise data sources when it's trying to do a refresh? That's the challenge, and that is what you are going to solve by installing this gateway, the Power BI gateway, on one of the machines inside the network. Could be a local computer, could be a server, could be a different machine. So let's talk about that. It's like, how do I use it? How do you configure it? How do you set it up? Well, you can do that in 3 simple steps. one, you download the Power BI Gateway. Second, you install it, the Power BI Gateway. There are two modes. We'll talk about that. And last step is to configure the Power BI Gateway. Let's talk about download. That one is really easy if you know where to look. So it's easily located inside your Power BI portal itself. So just log into powerbi.com and then click on this icon right there. And once you do that, it's going to give you a drop down. And from there, just select the Data Gateway option, and that'll take you to a page from where you can download the latest edition of Power BI Gateway. Let's move on to step 2, which is to install the Power BI Gateway. Now, when you launch the installer, it's going to right away give you these two options. Right, so the first one is saying on-premise data gateway recommended. I'm going to call that the enterprise mode. And the other one says on-premise data gateway personal mode, and I'll just refer to that as personal mode. So there are these two options which you have to choose right away. Do you want to install it in enterprise mode or personal mode? Let's talk about these two. So this comes from the Microsoft website, and this compares the two options. Let's talk about the personal mode first. Now, again, if you are evaluating Power BI or just trying it out for yourself, then personal mode is the way to go, even though some of the Microsoft documentation, and of course you saw the install screen, it says, oh, the other one is recommended. That's okay. But again, if you're just evaluating Power BI, just using it for yourself, then this is probably the right option for you. Now, one advantage for this is that you can install this even if you're not an administrator on the computer. So some companies have these permissions locked down. You may not be an administrator even on your own machine. So if you but this option, personal mode, would still work, right? And so this one runs with your credentials, and it definitely can import data and set up skill refresh. So this would work, but this would work pretty much for you. So let's talk about the other option, which is the enterprise mode. So for that one, well, this one is typically set up by IT or maintained by IT, but not necessarily so. Maybe you're a team of I don't know, 10 or 20 finance people, and one of you sets up this Power BI Gateway in the enterprise mode so that every member in the finance team can access this gateway and can use this gateway to refresh their model, right? So again, can be IT or can be a business user, but the main idea is that this can serve multiple users. Multiple users can use this gateway to help with refreshing the model, and it definitely can do that. It also has some additional bells and whistles for direct query support and support for live connection to analysis services. So that's it. That's for the install step. Now for the configure step, we would cover the configuration steps in our upcoming videos in a lot of detail, and we'll link them here so you can watch them all and get step-by-step instructions on how to set up the Power BI Gateway in personal mode or enterprise mode. They are quite a bit different. All right, so for this video, I wanted to talk about the last question we were trying to answer, which is, can you avoid using a having to use a Power BI Gateway? Now, first of all, what would be the reasons that you want to avoid? Well, maybe you feel it's going to be a hassle, or maybe you're not quite ready for it yet. I mean, you do want the refresh, but you're just evaluating Power BI, and this sounds too serious, and like, you know what, I'll deal with it later. Or it's quite possible that you are just keep running into errors using the gateway. And again, my other videos are going to help you with that, but still it's possible that you're in this scenario. Or maybe there could be other scenarios as well. So maybe you have one of these reasons for that. So I'm just going to share with you the tips that I know of what you can use to avoid having to use a Power BI Gateway. Your first option is you avoid using local or on-premise data sources and instead use cloud-only sources. So if you're connecting to kind of SharePoint Online or kind of web data sources and so forth, then you do not need a gateway. You do not need a gateway. Now, of course, a lot of times you do not have a choice, but I'm just going to just share one example with you where people often have this choice when they're working with OneDrive or SharePoint online files or folders. Now, what I've seen people do is that they go into they are using OneDrive and SharePoint folders or something, but they have those synced to their own desktop machine. And what they do is they connect to that file, all or that folder by pointing to their local copy, right? So they would say, oh, I want to connect to this Excel file. They would navigate inside their, kind of computer, Windows Explorer, and select that file. And what that's going to end up what's going to end up happening is that the file path would be hard coded to a local path on your machine, right? So again, the file exists in the cloud, but the way you connected to the file, you ended up Power BI. As far as Power BI is concerned, it's a local file. Now, of course, you can easily change that by using the web option and then connecting to the file using the URL. And now Power BI is going to understand that, oh, this is not a local file, this is a web file, and given the right credentials, which you will provide Power BI, I can access it without needing a gateway, right? So again, in some cases, you can kind of switch this and have this option. So just keep that in mind. And if you are curious about finding out more about how you can connect Power BI to SharePoint files and SharePoint folders and SharePoint lists, I have a complete video for you, my friend. So again, it's linked up in the corner and down in the description as well. So that was option 1, to avoid local on-premise data sources and use cloud sources exclusively. In that case, you don't need gateway to do the refresh. Let's talk about option 2, which is simple. You do not refresh in cloud, right? So, I mean, as long as you publish the file, the file still works. So if you choose not to refresh in the cloud, you then have 2 options. All right, so 2A is you just refresh manually and publish it to PowerBI.com. So I know this, well, it may work in some scenarios. Maybe the file doesn't need frequent refresh, or maybe, again, you're just testing things out, right? So you can always just open Power BI Desktop, hit the refresh button manually. It's gonna work on your computer with your credentials, inside the network. No Power BI gateway needed. And then once the refresh is done, you just hit the publish button again and republish it to PowerBI.com. Now, of course, if that doesn't sound too appealing, then you can also look into third-party tools which can schedule a local refresh on your computer. So the refresh doesn't work on the cloud, it works locally on your computer and thus does not need a Power BI gateway. And then they can automatically publish to PowerBI.com. One such tool is Power Update, but I'm sure there are others there as well. Hopefully, I was able to answer all 4 of these questions for you. At this point, make sure to check out our other videos on Power BI Gateway, and also check out our 60-minute Power BI tutorial link there as well. I'll see you next time. Until then, power on. Hey, keep watching more videos and keep learning Power BI. But if you did enjoy this video, I would love to hear from you. So leave a comment, like, subscribe, all the good stuff. Power on, my friends.